Okay. So I'd like to introduce to you our speaker for tonight. He's Erich. I'm not going I'm not going to risk saying his surname. I'll just keep it Erich. He's the author of the book Leading Exponential Change. He has worked with several organizations across the globe and helped with their transformations and change initiatives. I will hand over now to Erich. Erich, please introduce a little bit more about yourself and
All
take it from
right.
there.
Let me just share the screen first. I've been working all around the world. In fact, I lived in the UK for 7 years, but it was long time ago. I'm originally from Uruguay, and basically I was working for. I started with agility in around 2005. I work for British Telecom. I work for several companies over there. And then I moved to Malta. Horrible place, with beaches and something horrible. And then I've been working all around the world with different companies. And at some point, something happened. Well, I mean, things happen all the time, right? So I'm trying to give you some time for you to warm up with my kind of Latin American accent until you say, oh, yes, I know now what Eric is saying. So most of the companies I've been working around the world, what I found is that they try to expand agility and techniques to the rest of the organization. And sometimes it is very challenging. We have different mindsets, we have different ideas. And then I started running experiment with companies. Obviously, companies didn't know that I was doing it with them. Some of them were very successful, other ones they were not. Um, then at some point, I realized that some of the experiments I was doing, nobody were doing them at that point, and I started documenting them. And when I had a lot of information and experiment, I decided to write the first edition of Leading Exponential Change, which is basically about how to make people embrace change and feel comfortable with that in an era where things are changing constantly. And that was my objective. I started doing a lot of research about neuroscience of change, what happens in the brain when you go through change, and things that I didn't find in other books. And I decided to publish the first edition, and now we are going. Now that we are currently now on the second edition, which makes me very happy, and it's available in many languages. So it's a change. Now there is a massive change in many parts of the world. I'm not going to talk about that, but I hope what I'm going to talk about today, it helps you learn new skills and you can start using them. So many of the skills, guys, I'm going to tell you today, I'm going to teach you today, so I'm going to show you today, you're going to be able to use them from tomorrow if you want. It's up to you, right? And obviously, if you want to buy the book, the author is going to be more than happy. So let's start with the very basic. Oh, something I forgot. When we started with this COVID, many of my friends and colleagues around the world and coaches I was working with, they lost their jobs. And I started thinking how to help them. Many people were writing to me and they say, Eric, how we can, I cannot afford to buy books or courses. So I started doing this, what I call the organizational pill, which is like a red pill, like the Matrix. And I do different episodes, 5 minutes, that you can watch them during break time, lunchtime, at night, or whatever you want, and are all free. Different topics about teaching the product owner how to say no, or the pyramid of change, that I'm going to be talking about that today. And as much as I have time, I try to add new chapters with different things. And if you have ideas, I have a backlog, and then I put your ideas in the backlog, and I do that for free just to contribute with people and try to make sure they have enough knowledge to advance in their careers. So just this is the link. and that's called the organizational pill. And I hope if you watch them, some of them are very funny. Even sometimes we talk topic like dealing with psychopath during agile change. So it's very good fun. I try for people to laugh during that. Said that, let's start with the very, very basics. I want to make sure everyone is on the same page. And the basic is that there are many different types of change. And what I'm gonna be talking during this presentation is what I call exponential pace of change, things that are changing very quickly. And why I want to clarify that is because our brains have a restriction. We cannot change as quickly as we can, right? And I think it happened to everyone. We need time to reflect on things, and then things happen and we come up with some conclusions. But unfortunately, market change very quickly. And Charlie classifies 5 different things which impact on market, on things, on your life, on everything that happened, which is obviously unexpected events. I'm not going to mention any unexpected event, but I imagine you have some in mind already. Then we have short work cycles. Companies started using short work cycles a long time ago. And what they do is they create market disruptions. They disrupt the market more and more. So it happened that maybe you're going to release a product, and then the day you're going to release a product or 2 days before, someone release a product better than yours. So the amount of pressure we are making on the market is creating more and more disruptions, and that's create chaos in some way. Then people are interconnected, that you can share knowledge with other people, and we build more knowledge based on many fields, and that also accelerate the market disruptions. Artificial intelligence. I've been doing so many cool things these days with artificial intelligence that is really exponential. And finally, big data. With all these things, what is happening is that there are an acceleration of market disruptions. The problem with this is that human beings are not prepared for accelerated change. And some of the techniques I'm going to show you today, some of the techniques you used before, especially now with COVID, I want to tell you what happens in people's brain and how some areas of the brain work. And you're going to see some of the techniques you use with Scrum or Agile. They do not work very well at the moment. And I'm going to try to explain to you why, right? It has been a hard time for everyone. I'm here in Thailand. People say, oh, yeah, you are very lucky you are in Thailand. Yeah, it's true. I can just walk 100 meters. I'm on the beach. I have all my clients and coaches all around the world, but it's hard for everyone. This is something hard. The important thing is, as a consultant, you have to understand that sometimes, even now when you go to a company, you're like a god, the light, you know, you are inspiring so many people. So the more tools we have, the more things we learn, the more we can inspire people, we can be a role model. And we are, for many companies, we are an opportunity for them to improve and to find a way to just, you know, in such a hard time, to find a way to find this spot and new products and new things to do and to keep everyone motivated. So after that, I'm gonna go briefly just to make sure we are on the same page with COVID. First, some countries have quarantine, other countries have curfew. We didn't have quarantine or curfew here in Thailand. We were very lucky, but they closed the areas, neighborhoods, and we were not able to go outside. And in other countries it's different. We have something very important called ataraxia. Ataraxia is something we from psychology is called is what they call a state of tranquility. Imagine that you go to work every day, you have to go on the underground or metro or take the car, and then that produces certain stress in your brain. Now, when you work from home, the type of stress is different. So the areas of the brain that and the stress produced is completely different. So it means that your brain works in a different way. And if you have been working from home for a long time, you cannot go from one day to another to the office because the levels of stress are different, and your brain needs time to accommodate to the new situation. So I always say with ataraxia means that, yes, it's certain tranquility. You have different stress. You don't have stress because you're maybe not in the car, you work from home, but you have different kind of stress. So one of the things the companies need to think about is how to do it gradually. If at some point we get off COVID, then we cannot take from one day to another people into the company. Have to be gradually, maybe a few times a day, and slowly integrating people into the company for the brain to get used to that, right? Then we have possible changes in the workplace that can generate conscious or subconscious thoughts. Maybe sometimes people do not know, and I'm gonna connect this with exponential change. So sometimes during COVID, people had to change the ways of life. What we saw before is that they have market disruption when they went to the company, a product didn't work, they have to go in a different direction, they were pressuring the company. But then when we were back home, hopefully your life was the same. Now it's different. There was disruptions in your life and also disruptions in the companies. And then fear of unknown, and this is very important. People do not usually sleep well. This is something everyone mentions. Then you have subconscious fears. Even if you believe that you're going to be there, you don't know if you're going to be there next week. Hopefully, yes. And then that's is at the back of your brain thinking that, and then that produces something I will mention in a few minutes. And then other emotional aspects. Today they say that numbers are going better, and tomorrow they say are going worse, and then the first minister or president may give a message that nobody understands, and then something changes the day after, and this is a chaos, and then you have to find a way. Okay, so all this impacts on the brain and impacts on how flexible you are to change. And then when people need to work with products that are also changing, sometimes flexibility is different. So I'm going to mention some things that work or do not work very well with Agile. So let me try to clarify three very important concepts for a change consultant. I imagine everyone in the company wants to make a good change, right? Even if you are a product owner, Scrum Master, Agile coach, or whatever you are, you want to make a positive change. So we want to be on the same page. And long time ago, I came up with this definition of business agility. Sometimes companies need a clear definition in order to go in some direction. So for me, business agility is the capacity for the company to adapt to the new market conditions to create a competitive advantage. But the most important thing is what we can see in red here, which is in orange, which is without negatively impacting on its organizational health. So whatever you do in the company has to be sustainable. If you do something and it's not sustainable, your organizational health is gonna deteriorate. And then this is where all the problems and conflicts start. And specifically now, when people are coming from a situation which is already hard, we need to understand that whatever we apply in the company has to keep the same organizational health or increase it. And then let me tell you what is organizational health, because what some of you say, hey, what's your organizational health? Okay, for me, it's psychological safety, which is the person feels safe in the company, feels like they can speak about whatever they want, plus the creation of sustainable business value in perpetuity. A few days ago, a person contacted me, the CEO of a company contacted me and said, Eric, I wanted to see if you can help me. Okay, I said, well, okay, tell me more about that. This is Charlie, what we say, right? we never say any other thing. And then the guy said, okay, I want my team to go faster and to produce more business value. And the question was, okay, if you had to choose one, do you want to go faster or you want to produce more business value, the right business value? And obviously the answer was both of them, right? This is something that generally happens to you. People want everything. Obviously, if you go too fast, then it cannot be sustainable. If you make, for example, people work extra hours, then at some point they're going to be tired and then they're going to be able to work anymore, or they're going to lose focus. So that's why for me, I use the word perpetuity in perpetuity, because it has to be something which is sustainable, right? And then the last thing is resilience, which is the ability for you to recover. So from my perspective, resilience in a person is the capacity to recover from a situation. Obviously, you recover in a good way. It's not like, you know, someone cut one leg and then you struggle with that your whole life. You recover and then your legs and your body and your mind, everything is fine. Now, in companies, apart from that type of resilience, we have two more types of resilience, which is the first one is social resilience, which is your team is helping you to recover if you have a good team with good organizational health. And then there is what I call procedural resilience, which is the procedures of the company support you to recover, right? Does it make sense, guys? So give me a thumb if we are good. Yes, with all this explanation, just in order to be everyone on the same page, right? So now, imagine you go to an organization. Let me tell you what happened in organizations. You have people, for example, that want to change, with people who do not want to change for some reason that we don't know why. And then people that want to change in teams that do not want to change, and people who do not want to change in teams who want to change, and connected to teams who do not want to change, and teams who want to change, that want to change, and people want to change, and then managers who want or not to change, and then CEOs who do not know what a great vision is. And then we have external consultants that come with a different culture to the organization. And then this company have strategic partners that they are somewhere around, and then these guys have a different culture. Maybe they do not share the values. And then they have the teams that produce software, or the teams do not produce software. The CEO of the company that does not know very well what he wants, and sometimes he knows very well, or sometimes the company does not have a vision, etc., etc. And then finally, for many companies, the client, when they should be first, right? And then the problem is how we make sure that we help them change. That's the first question. And then with accelerated change, everything is changing. And this is a very, very important thing, how we make sure they change and how they help them. So what happened is with COVID, and there is an increase in stress in people, and there is an area in the brain which is called the amygdala. The amygdala is basically activated when people suffer some situation where there is high stress, and then the amygdala it floods into your brain a lot of different hormones. These hormones put you in some state, it's called fight or flight, and basically disactivate the front of the brain, which is the thinking brain, and you start thinking like a monkey, right? So the more stressed people are during COVID, the more activation of the amygdala they have. The important thing here is that the more activation of the amygdala, the less flexible to change people are. So what you have to expect now is that people are going to have some conscious or subconscious fears, and they are not going to be as flexible as before. So you have to be very, very careful with people, right? This is the first thing I have to tell you. And I'm going to try to teach you a framework today, or many frameworks that you can use in your company to help people change and to try to embrace things. I came up with this framework a long time ago when I was in a bank. I was in New Zealand, and I went to a bank, and they have all IT software teams, and they were quite good. And they said, Eric, you know what? From tomorrow, next week, I need a favor from you. I want to have Scrum teams where we have technical people, but maybe some of them, they don't even produce software. And we also want them to use some of the techniques they use in Scrum and embrace agility. Imagine, I think that was on Friday. I think I have a very bad week. I say, how the hell am I going to do that? People with different mindsets from different areas. And then they're asking me, all these people should go in the same direction, they should change. And then we have to use techniques that are thought for originally for software. We don't know how we're going to do that with people who are not from software. We have some people not even connected with different mindsets. And it was very, very hard for me to do that. And then I came up with a couple of frameworks I'm going to teach you today. Just think that, for example, if you give a problem, the same problem to someone from marketing, someone from sales, and some IT person, then all these three people are going to give you a different answer. This is because they have different mindsets. So if they need to work together, or you have teams that they do not produce software. With enterprise agility, we want the whole company to be more agile, to be more responsive. Then what's going to happen is going to be very difficult for you. So my first idea today is that I will teach you different frameworks that you can use to accelerate change in the organization, right? So basically, when I go to a company that they ask me anything that, we want to do something there, we want to these teams to be more responsive or to embrace agility, I start with 4 different steps. The first step is history. I go there and try to look back in history. One of the things that I found is that when consultants go to a company, for example, someone asks you, from next week you have to teach a Scrum framework, or you have to do something else with the teams. People just go there, find the impediment, remove the impediment, and then they just go and teach. But when we want to do something a little bit deeper, we want people to embrace and connect with the whole organization, we need to take a look at the history of that team, because many of the dysfunctionality from those teams do not come from the present, they come from the past. And when we need to find out what's the history of that team, what's the history of this group of people, etc. One company I helped in Latin America, I was helping them in 2014, just trying to expand agility to the rest of the organization. You can't imagine how many agile coaches go every year and teach exactly the same tools. Does it happen to you that you heard about one company doing a transformation, and then the following year the same company is doing another transformation, and then it looks to be they teach exactly the same things once and again? So it's good to know first history, right, about things before doing anything. The second thing is, which kind of mindset do you have? Do you have almost the same mindset? For example, do you have IT mindset? Even they can be different, but there are some things are similar. Do you have completely different mindset where you're going to have marketing, sales, you're going to have people that never use a computer with people who are IT? How it's going to work? And then there is a specific framework to use here I want to show you today. Then the context, what's the context for these teams? What is expected? What are the goals? What they wanted to achieve? What happens if they do not achieve that, etc. And finally, which mechanisms we are going to be using, right? So today, sorry, number 5 is just the very last one, which is short-term versus long-term, right? What do they want? They want to achieve in the short term and try to balance it with the long term. As many companies, they do not know that they cannot get everything, right? So what I'm going to ask you is, guys, if you can help me. Today, I have a PowerPoint here, which is empty, and I want you to help me complete that. So the idea is that, imagine that someone asks you to go and help a team or a group of people, and then you go there and you need to find out about the history of this team. I propose that you tell me which techniques you can use, if there is any, if you know any, right? And then let's write in the chat. You can even join with the camera and you tell me any technique that you know in order to know the history of this interview. You interview people, right? Yes. Imagine you are an outsider. They never saw your face before. What do you do? Icebreakers. Yes. Can you give me an idea? Okay. Let me share. I want to be sharing this screen. So give me some ideas of what you think we should be doing, right? So we said icebreakers, good idea. Then you mentioned something. Oh, join the team for a sprint. Yeah, good. And then you also mentioned about interviews. What if it's not an IT team and they are not doing a sprint? How you solve it? Health checks, very good. To do any specific health check, guys? Look at the specific documentation. Okay. Yes. Any other idea? One-to-one chat. Yes, that's good. Now I'm going to ask you to go even more radical. Can you go more radical with that? Can you come up with something crazy? Objectives and KPIs, yes. Shadow their daily work, yeah, which is maybe joining the team and doing some shadowing, yes. Join the teams, yes. Join the sprint. Join a retrospective. Yes, that's something important. I don't know how that team can feel if you're an outsider, but can be another option. Yes. Personal stories. Yes. Oh, timeline. Yes, health check. Who suggested the health check? Maybe you can join now with the camera and explain the rest what the health check is or how you do it. Yeah, can you join us? Are you okay with that? Anything else? Spotify or Atlassian health check? I never use them. I use my own health checks. Yes. Sometimes, guys, what I do is sometimes we do a picnic, and then I talk to the girlfriends or wives to find out how the guys are doing. That's also another idea. Yes, teams, customers. Yes, that's very good. Also, all are very good ideas, guys. There is nothing which is right or wrong. I'm just trying to make sure I give some ideas from you, feedback from client. Okay, so this is excellent. So I'm gonna show you now something else. I originally didn't think of showing this, but I will show you. Let's see. But I like it. I like when you also give me an idea for my next presentation, right? So I will show you a framework you can use here. This is something very simple framework that I developed. You can maybe use it or not. And then with some of the things you mentioned, it could be great, right? Let me now share this screen. Okay, so basically what I do is these 5 things. Some of them you know, probably these 5 things. Mechanical skills. These people, some people call these hard skills, but hard skills, I prefer to use the mechanical skill, and I will tell you soon why. Then we have emotional skills. Some people prefer to use soft skills and hard skills, but sometimes for me it's confusing. And for example, negotiation is a soft skill, but negotiation is something that is sometimes very mechanical. You learn some skills, so I try to use mechanical and emotional skills. If you have a very emotional part on you, it's touching you, emotional part of people is a skill that I call it emotional skills, right? Then we have mental agility. Mental agility is the capacity for people to be able to reframe problems. And then finally, we have organizational health, where we can see healthy checks. So what I try sometimes to do with teams is try to see which skills they got in the past and now, which emotional skill will happen in the team, in the conflict, and how flexible mentally they are. All my book is based on the fact that I believe that if people are not very mentally flexible, what I call mental agility, they are not going to be able to be resilient or to change the organization. And then organizational health. What is good here is that many of the techniques, you can group them in many of these areas. And then what you see, some of these areas are going to be almost empty. And what you do is try to complete and to make sure you level the different areas. Okay? So far, so good? Yes, give me a thumb. Yeah, good. Okay, so mindset. So what do we do if we have people from different mindsets? How do we level them? How we make sure that you help them change, embrace change faster? And this is one of the problems. If you have people with different mindsets, generally, sometimes you have an increasing conflict. The higher the conflict is in the company, the less adaptability and the less business value they are going to deliver. This that can make like sounds like common sense. Sometimes people do not stop, or CEOs do not stop to think of that. So this is something I came up a long time ago. It's a framework you can use, and it's basically based on 5 different levels, right? And I will try to also read your comments on the meantime. If there is any question, then I try to answer. Okay, human skills. Yes, someone said that they call it human skills. Yes, can be also human skill, as long as people understand it. It's good, right? So basically, yeah, I read also, Wilson, your 20 minutes. Yeah. So basically, mindset here is we start with the bottom, and then this one says that you have 5 different mindsets. There are no right or wrong mindset, but what it says, the pyramid of the change journey, is the higher you are in this triangle, the easier it's going to be for that person to embrace change. And we have different techniques we use in these levels, right? I came up with this triangle, and it's also in the book. At the bottom, we have what the people who say, I want things to be as I say, I don't care about you. When we find this kind of people, that some of you probably hate these people, but what it is a different mindset. They don't like working with them. But I will tell you, most of the time, these people have conscious and subconscious fears of that. For example, they are going to lose prestige, or they are going to lose their position, or could be anything. But many times it's about subconscious fears. It's not something that people generally stop to think about. And let me tell you that at this level, even if you teach new techniques or new framework, that's not going to work. You need to make sure that you focus on the very basic things of what makes this person feel safe, and you focus on that. When you work with the person at this level, there are many techniques that you can use, but mainly is reinforcing the sense of safety for that people or team. When that happens and the person feels safe, they move to a second mindset, which is, I don't like the proposed change. This is a different mindset. In here, basically, people many times, they do not have the abilities to understand the change. Right? It can be soft skills, or you can call it emotional skills, or maybe can be hard skills or mechanical skills, right? But the person do not like it because the person do not understand it. Maybe sometimes if people are unable to reframe the problems and see the problems from the same point of view of the company. And then if that happens, you reinforce that, they move to the third mindset, which is, I don't understand why they change. When it's this, it means the person is ready to discuss about the change. The person understands the change, or it makes an effort to understand the change, but they have the tools. This is the level where you start teaching Scrum or teaching framework, or start teaching the person different skills. But when they do not understand why they change, they are very open to discuss it. Right? Even maybe they do not agree, but they feel safe already. They have certain skills. And then at this point is trying to find out what this person is worried about in terms of what's going to happen. Maybe, he does have a team, but with the new change, things are going to change, etc. Right? But at this point, if you can teach this person or give this person more information about why they change, the vision, the mission, etc., and then this person is going to be open to discuss the change. And the person is almost ready to embrace change, but they move to the following level, which is, I don't understand why we must or we should change. And this level, the person is not going to change unless people around them also is embraced with that, or is looking forward for the change. For example, a team, even if this person is convinced that he should change, if the team does not feel like they have to change, that person is not going to probably change. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that the whole team can see the purpose. Everyone is on the same board. The whole team has the skills. They know how it's going to work. They have visibility. But it's interesting because we are moving from inside, from the person, to outside, right? And this is something that we have to make sure that we understand. When the team is ready and they went through all these 5 different mindsets, they move to the last level, the mindset, which is people are ready to change, right? And we have different techniques based on which level we are on this triangle, right? Wilson, how many minutes do I have? Give me a hint.
So if we were going to have 10 minutes of Q&A until 7, so another 15 minutes. Maybe.
Okay, that's perfect. So this is a very interesting tool for you guys to start to understand. Try to think the people you have around and try to think where they are, right? And make sure they use the right tools. For example, the person at the very bottom of the triangle, then even if you teach a framework or you teach things to the team around them, this person is not going to change, right? You need to identify each of these stages are very clear. There are no good or bad people here. There are just people who want to change. I also wrote an article about psychopathic and narcissistic people. That this is just for healthy people. Healthy people move in this way. If you want to know, you don't know what is narcissistic or psychopathic people, then I recommend an article after that you can read and what to do with these people during change. But healthy people follow this triangle, right? So then context. I'm trying to give you some very practical tools today. So most of the companies I help nowadays, they are or eventually working from home, or they have a hybrid environment where some people are from home and some people are working from the office, right? Most of the companies use Zoom or Skype or something, right? And this is shit. You have to, don't think a company can be just working in this way, just using this kind of tools, because the real environment is different than just talking to your peers, facing the face of other person, right? So in a serious environment, in a serious company, I want to embrace agility. They have to, what I call, rebuild the social environment. So if you have a hybrid environment, we have to rebuild the social environment. What it means. Imagine that you are physically in the office, all right? COVID finished, you go back to the office. When you're in the office, you look around and you can see public radiators, Kanbans, information coming from everywhere, right? You have social interaction. You can interact with people. You can see their bodies, the whole body. You can see how they move. You can see how they talk, how they look at you, right? We have a recognition of facial expressions. For example, someone smiling at you, another person looking very upset, corporate expressions, right? You can see actions. For example, imagine that someone from your team is meeting, you see someone from your team meeting as a specific person, right? DBA, a database specialist. Then tomorrow you want to know something about the databases, and then you would probably talk first to that member of the team, not to the specialist. This is because your brain recorded that movement, that action, and associated that if someone from your team was talking to someone who is a specialist on something, then maybe that member from the team, they have the skills. So our brain is connecting all this, right? And then when you're in a company where you want to make sure the company do not stop building or creating value, you need to rebuild the environment. And here I show you Sokoko, but can be any other tool. There are many. In Sokoko, you basically rebuild the whole environment, physical environment with the offices, and then every person has an avatar. And then every person moves in the corridors, and they can go not inside an office based on if they are the doors are open or closed. They can click inside the office on the information board. They can make notes, etc. In 2016, I came up with this theory of social environment that I also describe in the book. And then in one of the companies, we put cameras in all the offices, or most of the offices, and boards, and we put camera pointing the boards, and then people could be going inside that office virtually or physically, and there was no difference, right? At some point, we didn't know if someone was virtually or physically. You can see the faces. Nobody knew where the person was. People could check the boards, etc. And this is what a serious company needs if they want to keep developing and producing business value. If you just see the person, the face of that person, guys, this is not the best option. And we have recent pieces of research which shows that when you just see the face of the other person on the screen, your body is trying to reveal the social environment and is spending a lot of energy. And in fact, 1 hour of talking on the camera, just seeing the face of the other person, is like 3 or 4 hours of being in an office. It makes your brain really, really tired trying to reconstruct the physical environment. Okay, we good with this. Something we can do also at this point with COVID is try to improve the communities of practice where people can connect, where people can talk, they can learn something else. If you want to know about what a community of practice is, maybe you can check on the internet if you don't know. And daily balancing skills, I suggest that basically companies, if teams detect that they need some new skill, they talk to another team and they see if the skill is in the other team. For example, a team needs a UX and they talk to another team that has UX and try to come to an agreement with that team of how to share that UX. They don't need manager to do that, okay? And that's gonna go faster. And then after I said that, there are many tools you can use, guys, but forget about just using Zoom and this thing for companies. Then other things I use in companies, the mechanisms I can recommend. One of the mechanisms now for COVID is what I call rapid response room. It's a room where there is no tables or chairs. I generally recommend removing everything. And we have like some people call it information rooms. There are all information on the walls. This room can be physical and virtual at the same time, as I commented. And the idea is that we try to accelerate information flow. So how it works in a normal company, a physical company, basically people can go inside or outside this room, and anyone can go, not just managers. Anyone can go at any time, and there is information coming from all the markets and everywhere. And then imagine that a team goes into this room and realize that a similar company is releasing a similar product or even a better product tomorrow, right? And then you are releasing the product next week, a week after. So what this person is going to do, they are going to call everyone related, all the people from the values team, all the people related to them, and then they are going to make a decision, right? And they're going to inform everyone. So everyone can go inside this room. When they find a problem, they call everyone related. They inside this room, people, yes, obey, yeah, that's just something similar, yes. So everyone makes the decision, but what we do here also is we update the backlogs, right? The priorities of the backlogs. Maybe product owners are gonna resize some stories, and maybe we're gonna cancel some of the current sprints, right? And we're gonna try to go in a different direction. So the idea of here is that we are gonna have new hypotheses to be tested and new feedback, new objectives. So when rules in the market change, our promise, something we promised we would do, we don't need to do it anymore, right? And then you refine and improve. But everyone can go here, right? And then the last thing I'm gonna be talking today, short-term versus long-term. One of the things I found when I'm in a company, when people want to change something, or someone, some group or team, there is no sometimes a clear framework to use. And when we are talking about enterprise agility, I came up with this framework that also described in my book is 5 different types of agility. If you want people to embrace change, every time you make a change, at least you should consider the 5 types of agility. And every type of agility uses different techniques. So you at least should use with that change a little bit of these 5 types of agilities different technique of these areas, right? So these the base, the foundations of this enterprise agility, what I call mental agility. When I go to a company where people are not very flexible, I don't really believe that they're going to be able to embrace change. And in here, we generally use some techniques called reframing techniques. I also describe them in the book if you are curious, or you can check on the internet. Basically, the more we are able to see problems from different perspectives and embrace different perspectives, but also their values and principles, and feel comfortable with that, then the more flexible your brain is going to become. Is what we call neuroplasticity. So before working teaching, for example, any new framework to someone who is not going to receptive, not going to be open, I try to work on mental agility first. The second level of agility is social agility, is how these people connect virtually or physically, right? If you have people that do not connect well, then they are not going to be very agile, right? If you have the product owner in the fifth floor, the part of the team, and the first floor, and in another building, and then they don't talk to each other, or they talk through email, that's not going to produce value. So the question is, when I make a change, are people first flexible, mentally flexible? Second, do they have the connection, social connection they need? Third, I consider something called outcomes agility, which is basically how good the company is at changing the strategy. So for example, if you're going in a direction and you see the product is not working, then you need to change direction. How flexible the company is, how quickly they can change the budget, they can change the flows, etc. And then how flexible people feel with that, right? And then for this, there are also certain techniques you can use. But if the company changes strategy and everyone feels uncomfortable, then the company is not going to be very flexible. Then we have structural agility. This is the company trying to change the procedures, how flexible they are at changing procedures. But also something we have seen is that in companies where they change procedures and the companies integrate people that are going to be impacted by the changes of these procedures, these companies generally get better outcomes. For example, imagine you are changing a role. Managers now are servant leaders, and you change even the name. And companies where they just change the name without consulting and asking these people what they think about the name, what they think about the new role, if the new role has the same prestige as the previous one, the rules for the new roles. When they don't do that, things do not work very well. So structural agility is this flexibility in procedures and collective creation of these roles. And finally, we have technical agility. I call it technical agility. I'm so sorry, guys, which is what generally people call agile. What we generally do here is when we need to make a change, any change, we just make sure that we check these 5 different levels of agility. And I'll give you an example, and then we'll go for questions. A few years ago in a company, they wanted to install a new software. So they installed this new software, but this new software has bugs, right? And then the software crashed from time to time. They couldn't solve that for somehow. And then they decided to change a procedure, structural agility. Someone from the team was called the Agile Samurai. This person could come anytime, at any point during the morning, if at 3 in the morning, if the software crashed, and they could solve it, right? And then as a result of that, this person has some perks, like for example, he could come later in the day at 10 or 11 p.m., take longer breaks, etc., and because he was taking over this role. Then what happened is this person, when he was coming one day at 3 in the morning, this person crashed the car. Nothing happened to this person, right? But the company, we discovered the company didn't have the right procedures in order to deal with that, right? Also, this guy didn't know to whom he should call. There was no social agility. The people in the team talked between them, but not with other teams, and people were not very flexible. So if you see something very small, like is technical agility, like changing something from the IT area, involves looking at the other different levels of the cake. So basically, we cut the cake vertically. Every time we make a change, we check that we are at least doing something with the other, even if it's small, with other levels of the organization, right? And then, oops, sorry. And then if you are doing this, I assume that any change you are going to be doing in the organization is going to increase your resilience and your flexibility, right? Let me share. I think it disappeared last minute. Let me share this again. So let me show you last thing, and we go for questions, right? I hope I try to be very practical with the things I show you guys. And then if you have an organizational improvement backlog, make sure that any change in that backlog also considers the 5 levels of each of these cake. All right. So questions, guys, anything you want to know, anything we have still a few minutes about what I would love to talk for hours about my experience with different things, but I just wanted to give you some of the framework to you to start thinking of that. So tell me about question you have about the framework we have seen today.
I have
Yeah.
we have a question in the on the slider. It's about the question reads like this: how do you assess mental agility of people when you join a company?
Ah, that's very interesting question. I generally use an activity. And I'm gonna do that with you. It's gonna take me like 2 minutes. Guys, think of someone you really like, right? A politician. Well, maybe lastly, people don't like politicians, right? But a football player, someone you really like, right? And try to think of that person. Try to visualize that person. Could be your father, it could be your mother, it could be a football player, someone you really like, and think of the values. Right? If you have pen and paper, you can write some of the values. If not, just mentally. Think what you like about that person. Right? And try to think of at least 2 or 3 values. Do you have them in mind? You don't have to share them with me, okay? Just keep them for you. Right? The short URL is correct. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So, okay, now I'm going to ask you the following thing. Think of someone that do not share anything like, with you. Could be a politician, could be again someone from the past, someone that you hate that person, you can't stand that person, that has completely different values. If you like red, that person likes green. If you like diversity, that person does not like the diversity. Imagine that person. Could be anyone, right? Could be anyone from the past, anyone from the present, someone you can't even stand. You have that person. So now think of some values this person has, some values, 3 values. Or at least 1 or 2 that you do not agree, right? If you like diversity, that person does not like diversity, that person, a value is not liking diversity, right? Now, I want you to embrace those values. Now, those values from the person you can't stand are your values. You don't like diversity anymore. You are a fan of not liking diversity. Take the second value, you love that value. Try to think you love that value. Try to convince yourself, right? So, for example, if you love extraterrestrial people and then this person do not like, then you do not like extraterrestrial people anymore, right? How do you feel? Are you feeling comfortable? Do you feel anything? Do you feel comfortable with that? So what happens is when you do this kind of exercises, there is an activation of your amygdala in general, telling you that you are not going in the right direction, that is dangerous, that is against your principles. The more you do this kind of exercises, the more flexible you become. It doesn't mean that you embrace those values, right? I love diversity. I think of everyone is a good person, and I like so many things from people. But at least you should be able to switch to switch, to put in the shoes of someone else, but embrace the, because sometimes companies, they say, yeah, we think we are in the shoes of our clients, and then they say, okay, what are the values of the client? Okay, now can you feel those values? And they do not. So one way to assess is just to make sure that people start, you can do a dynamic where people start trying to embrace values of people they don't stand, and see how comfortable they are. If people in the team can embrace 15 or 20 different values from different people, then in fact, sometimes we ask people to play a role like they are that person, but embracing. The more flexible they are, the more mental agility they have, right? And then something very easy, like if you see in a team that someone is sitting with someone else with different perspective and listening to that person actively and try to do some empathy, that person or that team has probably higher mental agility, right? Okay, so but there are more ways, but I imagine that if you look, you can remember or you have in mind someone who is not very flexible. Sometimes we are not very flexible. As coaches, we go to companies and we want things to go in a certain direction. Do you have any other question, guys? Anything you are curious about?
There's another question here from Colin.
Mhm.
If you find that an organization is weak in all of the 5 levels of agility,
Yes.
which would you work on first?
Ah, okay, that's a very interesting question. Thank you very much. So when they are weak in these 5 things, what I use is a technique that I also describe in the book. Is called a micro habit. Micro habits are very tiny habits you change and then increase organizational health. For example, imagine that you want to lose weight, right? And then you go to your company and then you like Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola, and then you have the Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola machine just 2 meters or 2 feet from you, right? It's not going to be good for you. So what if you change the Coca-Cola machine and you put it on the 7th floor and there is no lift, right? So what you try to do in these companies, in my experience, is try to make easy for people to embrace the good habits and very, very difficult to embrace the wrong ones, right? Does it make sense? So we change very difficult, very tiny habits, and then we make it very difficult. But it has to be very tiny habits, right? For example, the people do not want to do pairing. Maybe the tables in the room just push people to sit together, right? And that's what we do. We use the technique of the micro habits. So, any other question? Oh, I see that Alan is also sharing something. Thank you very much. Any other question you have, guys?
We don't have any question on Slido, but if you guys want to, the mic is open, so you can unmute and make the question if you have any for Erich.
Okay, so in the meantime, what we have seen today is about accelerated change. People do not feel comfortable with that. We talk about COVID, and then people coming from COVID, they have a conscious and unconscious fear with higher activation of the amygdala. They are not very flexible to change at the moment, a little bit less. People can explode or have conflict for little things. So we have to be very careful. We have to make sure we build a place where people feel safe. We had to try to reconstruct the social environment, not just use cameras for people to talk. Then I talked to you about the triangle of the journey, the change journey, for you to understand where is people in the journey and which techniques you can use. And we also talk about the war room, or this, room where you have the information room. And finally, the 5 types of agility. I hope with these techniques, guys, 6 or 7 techniques we have seen, you can start thinking of that and start helping you develop some different mindset with some cool ideas.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. You kind of mentioned, like, the mindset pyramid. And then you kind of said, like, when you in an organization with people with like different mindset, that's where it increased like the conflict. So how do you deal when you have like people with like really different mindsets? How do you manage to kind of like bring, you know, the two sides of the pyramid together?
Well, first of all, we need to make sure that you measure conflict, right? There are a few ways of measure how how conflict is in that team, right? And then I talk in the team, there are some framework to measure the level of conflict. And then they are quite old, but they are very useful. And then if the level of conflict is very high, you would not try to put them together, right? Because if you put them together, conflict is going to increase. So what you try to see first is how to decrease a bit conflict first, if there is any. Then if they have a different mindset, you have to make sure first increase, for me, we need to increase a little bit mental agility. People are not very flexible to see the problem from the other perspective. Then they are not going to be on the same page. You also need to make sure, if you imagine you put someone from finance. It happened to me, a team where I put about 3 people from finance that they have been working on their whole life, and then 2 developers. How you do that? Well, what we did initially, we did something very simple. We put a Kanban. So these people didn't talk to each other, but they have a Kanban. This guy just went and put some things on the Kanban and moved their own things, and they were a team, but they were a group. They were not a team. And then they started sharing in this Kanban, and they working together and started having some visibility of the process. Then slowly, we were building a vision. There was building a mission, so everyone was on the same board. But as everyone has different ways of working, slowly we have to find a way to accommodate. For example, in one of the teams where I work with these financial people, for them was very important when they were working, nobody interrupt them. So for example, we use a micro habit where people started working, we use a traffic light. We put it was a post-it, a red post-it. They put it on the table. If they put that on the table, then developers didn't come and didn't talk to them. They respect their time. So we try to understand because between 2 mindsets, there is always something in common. We try to see which working agreement they need first, basic working agreement. What do I need for them to work, right? So for example, I don't like waking up very early in the morning. This is something, if you're going to work with me, you need to know now that. So what do you need in order to work with me? And this is very basic question, right? So you cannot develop a team if people do not understand what do I need, do you need to work with me? All right, and this is very basic. And then what you do is see if there is a very tiny habit, a micro habit. What's the minimum habit? Because tiny habits are magical. People do not even think of that, and then suddenly they are cooperating, right? What's the minimum habit I can help them change in order for them to improve? Do not think of Scrum. Do not think of agility. Think of very tiny steps, right? Baby steps, right? I don't know if I answered your question or I gave you some examples.
Yeah, you did. Thank you. I do like the idea of the working agreement. I think that tends to work quite well. Thank you.
Any other question, guys?
Yeah, I've got a quick question. I was just wondering, what's your opinion on using personality tests to go alongside the mindset so people can work out, like someone's a Myers-Briggs or a DISC, what type of a person they're dealing with and what information they need?
Okay, so what I think is all the tools can be useful or not, depending on how you use them, right? The problem is that in many occasions, people just stick to the tool as if it were the Bible, right? And you are this because this tool says you are this, and I'm so many things, right? Listen, when I was a kid, I have dyslexia. When I was a kid, I went to the doctor, and when I was probably 7 years old, they told me, you could never, ever are going to be able to learn English. You never, ever are going to be able to work in a job where you have to think because you are also hyperactive, right? Then imagine if I followed that advice, I couldn't be able to be working as a consultant nowadays, and I couldn't be able to talk to you, right? And I think that one of the good things about tools is that they open a door or a window and they give you information. And we are what we know, but then we should keep open to other possibilities. And this is why, yes, you know this tool, but then when I learn a tool like this, I try to learn other two more tools, similar or different, to compare them and to be open to switch from one side to another, right? I'm not in favor or against it. I'm just saying that tools are should be a way to improve the way we think, not just to just focus on what, you know, just what the outcome of this tool, right?
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Any other question, guys?
Okay, it's a 1:15 now. We are already a bit over the time.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Erich. Thank you very much, everyone who has joined. The recording will be placed in the meetup page, will be shared there. If you could leave a feedback, it would be lovely. I've already shared the link with you. I will send it via email as well. I appreciate a lot. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I know many of you are in the other part of the globe. Stay safe, stay well. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining today.
Thanks, Erich. Bye.
Thank you.